Right. Good evening, everyone. To start the meeting this evening, we've got 6 questions from the public. Question 1, is Miss Skelton in attendance? No? So we'll just take that as read. And I think we've got Councillor Carol Burgess who's going to respond. Would you like to read the question as well?
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to read the question?
It's okay.
It's up on the screen, yes.
Yeah, you've all got the question. Sorry.
Okay. In response, can I assure you that your ward councillors, the council and myself, take the issues of drug misuse very seriously. This is why the Riverside ward councillors, who have indeed witnessed the drug taking for themselves, have met with the police, the manager of the bingo hall and the senior officers at Nexus to raise both residents and their own concerns. During this meeting, the issues in relation to the inadequacies of the security at the metro station were discussed. As a result of this meeting, Nexus have now agreed to improve the security at the metro station and increase the height of the fence at the station. And I'm pleased to announce that funding has been confirmed from Nexus for the replacement of that fence. This will allow those committing acts of antisocial behaviour to avoid the police by jumping over the fence. They have also appointed an officer to work directly with Northumbria Police around the Nexus services area in a more cooperative way. As a result of the ward councillors' intervention, a further meeting was being organised with the ward councillors for Riverside and Churton Ward and the Northumbria Police's Antisocial Behaviour Unit on Tuesday the 28th of November. We do recognise that drug dependence can have a devastating effect on our areas or on our families and friends, and as a result, the Council also provide community-based services that support families and carers of people who misuse drugs. As well as providing high quality and effective treatment services, the Council recognises the need for all residents to feel safe. We will therefore continue to work closely with our partners such as the police. Drug-related crime is a key priority for the Community Safety Partnership. We have online reporting systems in place and any reports of antisocial behaviour are investigated, allowing the Council, Police, Housing and Health to look at problem areas or work together to identify a solution. I would encourage all residents to continue to report antisocial behaviour and where crimes are being committed. I am pleased to be able to report that the Safer North Tyneside Partnership are overseeing the replacement of existing CCTV cameras across the borough. This includes working with Northumbria Police to replace their existing cameras to North Shields Town Centre. The work is about to commence and new cameras should be operational before the end of January 2018. In relation to Stonham Supported Housing Scheme, I have asked officers to speak to the home group and I know they have been working with you to try and deal with the questionnaires' concerns. Your ward councillors have also met with officers at Stonham and home group to highlight their concerns. Following these discussions, I've been assured that all residents with drug problems are referred to the drug treatment service and the staff are vigilant and report any concerns about the selling of drugs to the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Question 2, is Miss Quinn in attendance? No? I'll just take the question as read. Councillor Harrison, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I thank Ms Quinn for the question and say that I think it's important to note that making provision for new housing developments in the borough is not optional. It's a national government requirement of all local authorities in the country to produce a local plan, which must include provision for extra housing. In fact, there have been recent statements to suggest that some councils are being forced to build more homes than they would wish because they did not have in place a local plan that protects them. In response to what was a statute requirement placed upon us, we did produce the North Tyneside Local Plan, and this was adopted by Council in July 2017. In our plan, 70 sites have been identified as suitable for housing development. Of these 70 sites, 56 sites are on brownfield land. In fact, we have made provision for over 4,000 homes on brownfield land in the borough. Our plan puts certain controls in place for these future developments to ensure they meet identified needs, provide jobs, secure the infrastructure to support the growth, and protect and enhance our valuable green spaces. Our local plan faced an examination in public held by a government-appointed independent planning inspector appointed by the Secretary of State, who confirmed that the plan is in line with national policy. In relation to housing land availability, the inspector concluded the following. The Council has undertaken a thorough strategic housing land availability assessment exercise, which is part of a suite of documents which inform the local plan. This includes an assessment of land suitable for housing, which also has considered a vast array of brownfield sites, including those suggested in representations. There is no compelling evidence that a significant brownfield site has been overlooked. The finite capacity of brownfield sites in North Tyneside would not meet all housing, employment and service needs over the period to 2032. Consequently, this would not be a reasonable alternative spatial strategy. Greenfield land is therefore required, and are not my words, but the inspector's words, remember. In relation to empty properties, there are currently only 1.2% of properties in the borough that have been empty for more than 6 months. This is below the regional average. Although this is a relatively low percentage, helping residents return empty properties to use as soon as possible is part of a housing solution for North Tyneside. Over the past 5 years, the Council and partners have returned 277 long-term problematic properties to occupation through a range of measures, advice and practical assistance. I hope this answer puts in context the reasons for the development activity in the borough and how the Council has responded to the challenges of having to find more development space in the borough. And as a side chair, may I just also add in that the North Tyneside plan protects our green belt, which is 20% of the borough, and it creates new and accessible open spaces, adding to the 25% which is already open space. And that does not include, or certainly our linear park, which is our coastline within North Tyneside. So near enough 50% of North Tyneside is either green belt or is green land.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. We'll move on to question 3. Is Mr Carruthers in attendance? No? Well, we'll just take that question as read then. Again, it's Councillor Harrison. Could you respond, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. A robust traffic modelling exercise of the impact of the Merton Gap development was a requirement when developing the local plan. A product of the planning exercise was a coordinated strategy for transport and road improvements. The plan now includes a new strategic transport route from the A186 at Erzon to the A191 to the west of New York, and the A186 has the required capacity to accommodate the traffic predicted as a consequence of the local plan. As the new strategic route provides a more direct and shorter route to the 1058 or Coast Road and Cobalt Business Park from areas of Whitley Bay, Monks Eaton and South East Northumberland, we anticipate up to 20% of the existing trips on the A192/A191 and almost half of the trips on the Park Lane Shiremore will be removed during the peak periods once works are complete. In relation to other pinch points, when required, additional highway capacity will be provided, and investment required to make these improvements is a condition of any planning application for development. Another important factor is that in addition to the highway improvements I've referred to, the master plan for Merton Gap includes provision of an additional metro station with parking, which is an extremely effective mitigation for car trips within North Tyneside. There will also be new bus services and an existing walking, cycling network across the site, which also encourages sustainable modes of travel. All of this is in line with an agreed transport strategy which prioritises sustainable travel. And I do hope this information assures the gentleman that we have fully considered the impact of the development on our transport network and have put the right improvement plans in place to address his concerns. Again, our proposals were scrutinised and approved by the government-appointed independent planning inspector. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. The next question, Ms Baxter isn't in attendance, is that correct? Yes, we have, yes. So we'll just take that as read. And could I ask Councillor Sterling to respond, please?
I'm pleased to receive this question. The change to the street lighting levels along the Broadway are due to the recent installation of LED lighting. As an authority, we are switching to this type of lighting as it delivers in excess of 60% energy savings. Also, with around 1.5 million of electricity being consumed by our streetlights every year, I'm sure you can see why, in these challenging financial times, we are making this switch. This switch is designed to ensure that the new lighting levels meet the current British standard for street lighting, and was made after careful trials and in consultation with Northumbria Police. However, following your comments or the comments in here, I have asked for the lighting levels to be checked at this location over the next few weeks, as the safety of our residents is paramount concern to the Council. I will of course ensure that the person is informed of our findings and proposed response. Thank you again for bringing this to my attention.
Thank you, Councillor Sterling. Question 5. Is Mr Jarrett in attendance? No? I will take that question as read as well. Can I ask Councillor Hall to respond, please?
Can I first of all discuss the issue of walk-in, also known as urgent care centres, and tell you how very concerned and opposed I am to the proposals to close the walk-in or urgent care centres. In fact, as listed as item 5 on the agenda for this evening's meeting, I will be presenting a motion which asks this Council to call upon the Clinical Commissioning Group to go ahead with the planned opening of the 24/7 urgent care at Rayclane and request a full consultation to be undertaken throughout the borough on these controversial proposals. In addition to this, I know that the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and MPs have met with senior officers from the CCG and have written to them to highlight their own concerns in relation to the consultation exercise and plans for urgent care in North Tyneside. Turning now to the STP, the Sustainability and Transformation Plans cover an area larger than North Tyneside. We will therefore be working with the other areas to ensure that we are well represented. We have a joint health scrutiny committee which met on the 13th of November and discussed a report on the outcomes of a region-wide engagement exercise. The report stated that many people seemed unclear about the purpose of the engagement process. A number expressed frustration that the draft STP did not include more detail. The majority of people who took part in this phase of engagement wanted to debate the detail of how implementing the vision would affect particular services, with concerns raised about potential changes or loss of current services that they value. There were a number of negative comments about the format of the STP, with many commenting that it was written in jargon, much of which was not easily understood by people who did not work in health or social care. There is a clear message from many respondents about the need for an open, transparent and inclusive consultation process that enables people to be involved in shaping services for the future and able to contribute to an informed debate about the options for the future of the local health and social system. It is important to note that there are not yet any concrete proposals arising from the STP which would represent a substantial development or variation of services affecting North Tyneside. If there are any such proposals in the future, North Tyneside CCG will be required to carry out consultation, and the North Tyneside Overview and Scrutiny Committee will consider the proposals. In all of these discussions, I will ensure that North Tyneside residents are at the forefront of any proposals and are well represented.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. We move on to question 6, and again I'm informed that Mr and Mrs Whittle are not in attendance. So we'll take that question as read, and I'll ask Councillor Harrison to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the concerns that Mr and Mrs Whittle have raised about the speed of the vehicles at this location, I can confirm the team have carried out a traffic survey on this section of Station Road, and the results of this survey show vehicle speeds which comply with the Department of Transport guidance related to the speed limit and classification of this road. Also, I have checked the police collision database, which I am pleased to report shows that no collisions have been recorded at this location in the last 3 years. In junction design terms, I am assured that giveaway markings at the junction have been aligned to improve visibility for motorists exiting Glebe Avenue, which takes into account its proximity to the bend to the north of the junction. However, I do accept that not every near miss is recorded, and following the concerns they have raised, I have asked officers to arrange for the variable message sign which displays your speed to be temporarily located in this area, and that further monitoring of the vehicle speeds takes place at this location over the next 6 to 12 months. Can I thank Mr and Mrs Whittle for raising this question here today.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. We'll now move on to item 2, apologies, and I've received apologies from Councillors Mulvenna and Waggett-Fairley. Do I have any other apologies? Councillor Early?
Yes, Chair. Councillors Johnson, Cassidy, Lee, Allen, Barkle and Councillor Linda Dark.
Thank you. Do you have any other apologies? Councillor Wallace?
Chairman, Councillor Hodgson's been delayed but does hope to join us.
Okay, thank you. Can I remind members that to record the attendance sheets, the relevant attendance sheets. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I also remind members that they have any registrable or non-registrable interest in matters appearing on the agenda, they must verbally declare such interests and the nature of those interests. You're also invited to disclose any dispensation of the requirement to declare any registrable or non-registrable interests that have been granted to you in respect of any matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should complete the card and return it to the receptacle located at the desk of the Democratic Services Officer before leaving. Thank you. There's lots of registrable, and I can't say that in that statement. Right, we'll move on to item 4, the minutes. Can I ask the council to confirm those minutes? Thank you. Item 5, the motions. I have 2 motions. The first motion, can I invite Councillor Newman to move this motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to bring this motion to the Council because it's something that's going to be very relevant as the year goes forward. As we know, North Tyneside Council has had to make over £109 million worth of savings since 2001. This is due to a number of pressures, including the reductions in government grants, growing demands in adult social care, children's social care, and unfunded new burdens such as the living wage. Now, the government has indicated that these cuts will continue to at least 2019-2020, Now, while North Tyneside Council has had to make, will have to be required to find over 18 million in savings as part of a funding gap of 41 million over the next 2 years, an extra 1 billion will be given to Northern Ireland as part of the Conservative Supply and Demand arrangement with the DUP. Now, I personally find that this is deeply unfair on our residents who have seen the vital services threatened by the government budget cuts. The Council therefore calls upon the Mayor to write to the Chancellor asking him to cancel all planned cuts to this Council. Now, by agreeing to this motion, this Council will take a very public step to protect the services that our residents rely on, so I will invite all members to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Could I ask Councillor McMullen to second the motion, please?
Certainly, Chair. Well, there seemed to be no issue yesterday with the Conservative cash machine dishing out things all over the place. So it doesn't seem unreasonable for us to ask for some support in this, because there are many things. It's not just the fact of our support being cut. It's also that we have some now unfunded cost pressures that will be added to us from the last budget, such as increases to the minimum wage, the ever-rising energy costs which have yet to be tackled by the government, and the effect of foreign exchange rates affecting our buying power, such as, and also the uncertainty of trade deals, which has caused the unit cost of our IT programme to rise by 25%. So things such as that, I have no reason or no issue with asking for some support in funding the items that this government is pushing forward, which we have to fund from having no money. So,
Thank you, Councillor McMullen. Are there any questions? Can I remind members that the questions are going to be seeking points of clarification and not political. The political statements can be made after that. Okay? Right.
Can I ask what the income has been for the council from council tax over the last 7 years?
I honestly don't have that information to hand. I can tell you that we have had £109 million worth of savings to make. That's one figure I do have. Whether our council tax receipts are going up, I don't have that information. I'm sure I could get it and circulate it to the council if required.
You can get it from me though. Yeah, great, thank you. But also, you mentioned that an extra 1 billion was given to Northern Ireland. I remember that being mentioned in Parliament, but I remember also some political commentators stating that it wasn't all new money. Is that 1 billion? Is that actual extra? Because some people did say that there was some actually it wasn't all new money.
I've got to be honest with you, my understanding of it is that the vast majority of that 1 billion will be extra funding. Again, though, I'll have to get that confirmed and send that out to you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. Can the movers tell us exactly how much North Tyneside has received in grants in each of the last 7 years?
Again, Councillor Wallace, I don't have that to hand. I can tell you that we have had them reduced, as you know, but I would have to get the exact figures and send them out to you.
So, Councillor Austin? Oh, sorry, had you finished? Sorry,
No,
Councillor
sorry,
Wallace.
I've got another one. What's the level of council reserves now compared with 7 years ago, please?
Again, I don't have that to hand because I don't find that it's relevant to the motion. The motion is specifically dealing with the fact that government grants have reduced, not the level of reserves.
Surely it is relevant when we're looking at the council finances. You can't really just look at a little bit of it.
I think the motion actually is about the reduction in grants, not about the level of the finances at the moment for the council. It's actually about the reduction in grants.
If I could ask them, Chairman, the motion refers to a funding gap of £41 million. How much of that is specifically down to government grant reductions?
Again, I do apologise, but I don't have the exact amount of grants reduction that's being placed. But you've got to understand that the government grant reduction is only part of this. The amount of pressures that we've got from stuff like living wage, increased demand on our social care means that we have a need for more funding. So specifically what we're dealing with here is the fact that we need more funding. So I would hope you would support that. I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't disagree with that, would you?
Well, what I'm asking about is the funding gap to which the motion refers, and I haven't actually got an answer, Chairman.
Chair.
But I'll also ask about the DUP agreement, if I may. In 2010, Gordon Brown made overtures to the DUP, and in 2015, so did
I think that's a political statement. That would be.
I'm simply asking.
Sorry.
Okay, right, thank
It's just questions. It's questions about the actual grants. That's what the motion refers to.
One more question, Chairman, if I may.
Chair, just a point of order.
In
Was all
January-
of this information not in the council budget papers that all of this council received when we agreed the budget in the budget meetings in February? Would all this information not been in those documents?
That's a fair point of order. You could refer to the budget and the papers. Councillor Wallace.
Equally with respect, Chairman, the mover of the motion doesn't have the answer, and it is actually his motion.
Well, I think
He's talking about the finances,
the move of the motion is actually referring to the reduction in grants.
to which he doesn't know the answer.
Well,
Listen, I've
he's-
got one more question, if I may, Chairman. In January, the government had a consultation on the provisional local government financial settlement. Could I ask what response was made by the council and what concerns were raised then?
Just right. Again, I think it's the reduction in grants. I think we could refer those questions to officers to respond.
Absolutely.
Okay,
If you have a copy, that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we'll
Chair.
refer those questions to officers to respond. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Could the mover of the motion tell us what the council's staffing figures were 7 years ago compared to what they are now?
Okay,
Again, I think that's a question. It's an officer's question. It's a specific. The motion is about the reduction in grants. Okay, thank you. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. Would the mover of the motion agree that the questions coming from the opposition are rather frivolous and akin to asking how many paper clips were used by the council in the last 7 years?
I think that's rather insulting, Chairman.
Well, again, we need to have questions specific to the motion. Can I ask Councillor McMullen? And I think was it. Sorry, did you?
No, the comments were covered by Andy during the
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barry, did you have to indicate? Right, okay. Now can I invite members to speak to the motion, please? Do we have anyone to speak to the motion? Councillor Wallace? And Councillor McIntyre? Councillor McIntyre, you did indicate, right? Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor Wallace.
Chairman. I think that we must look at this motion in the context of the national situation as well as our local position. And it's been very clear from the failure to answer the questions that the movers don't have the local information. The motion refers to the last 7 years. 7 years ago, when the coalition government took office, the national situation was absolutely dire. Under Labour, unemployment had soared, the national debt and deficit had soared too, and had we gone on in the same Labour ways, we'd be bankrupt now. Instead, the Conservatives took difficult but necessary decisions to address the problems and bring sound finances and restore growth to our economy. And the policies are working, Chairman. The proof of the pudding's in the eating. The economy is growing, unemployment is steadily falling. There are millions more people in work. I'm delighted at that, and I can't understand why Labour would prefer policies that keep people on the dole. Last week's figures showed unemployment down again. Unemployment is a tragedy for all ages, but particularly often for young people, and it's pleasing here in North Tyneside to see the significant fall in young people who are out of work, down from around 5% in 2012 to 2.7% now, and that's really welcome. Just yesterday, the Audit Committee here received a report which referred, and I quote, to increased investment, job increases and increased economic activity in North Tyneside, which I'm sure we all welcome. Businesses have been encouraged to invest and expand right across the country, especially in the IT sector, really important in the North East. A new high-tech business is starting up every hour in the UK, and that's fantastic. I welcome the Chancellor's measures yesterday to encourage more of this and more teaching of computer sciences in our schools to enable us to fully benefit from the changes. We've also seen government spending on infrastructure to improve transport, Huge sums here in the borough on road junctions, such as Billy Mill and the highway agencies working on Silverlink, a massive project. Just yesterday, £337 million on new metro trains was announced. This is confidence in our area. Labour did absolutely nothing for the North East, even with the Prime Minister who represented a North East constituency. We have had huge expenditure on our schools as well, funded by a Conservative government. We now see that a devolution deal has been agreed. Again, something the Conservatives have brought forward to give local people more control. It's a shame that the Labour leaders of our local authorities took so long to reach agreement. The deal could have been up and running, like on Teesside, where we're now seeing a Conservative mayor driving things forward. However, the new North of Tyne deal is welcome, and the mayor has said that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our borough, and I agree with that. I look forward to more decisions being taken locally as we take powers back from Brussels. I do dispute the figures which have been quoted for North Tyneside grant income decline. North Tyneside is getting around £1/3 billion per annum. Moreover, as a result of tax changes in income tax, people here are keeping more of their wages, more to spend in the borough before they have to pay tax at all. Remember, you started to pay tax at around £6,000 salary under Labour. Now it's heading for £12,000. That's enabled people to keep more of their own money, and it benefits lower paid people first. Reducing corporation tax has had the effect of bringing in more tax revenue, so that means more money for public services that we all want. We need these lower corporation tax rates to encourage businesses to set up across the UK, to set up in our borough, and bear in mind that business rates are going to be kept locally. That'll bring in more cash. We have pupil premium now, for example, funded from taxation. It didn't exist under Labour. This council is getting nearly £9 million per annum from it. If we contrast that with the performance under Labour, soaring taxes for individuals, high taxes for business, which actually raises less money for the Treasury, and soaring debts for the future. It was bad enough under Prime Minister
You've got
Blair.
1 minute.
It was bad enough under the Blair and Brown premierships, but the current Labour leader has always held up Venezuela as his ideal, an oil-rich country which is now completely on its knees and in tatters. No healthcare, little food, and people fleeing. It has everything to do with the motion, Chairman. The Conservative policies are working. They're focusing on getting people into work, improving our economy. That's benefiting North Tyneside year on year. I've demonstrated the Conservative policies are working. It's unfortunate that the movers of the motion don't have the full information available, or they don't seem to know it. The motion doesn't give a complete picture at all, and I regret that very much. I look forward to the government's continued economic success across the country and here in North Tyneside.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chairman. Any debate about reductions in government spending, and therefore council spending, has to be put in context. And this side of the chamber, it appears, has to continue to remind the other side of the chamber how we are here. The last Labour government, in its final year, and I'll remind you when that was, 2009/10, borrowed £155 billion to cover the shortfall between income and expenditure. In plain English, Labour overspent by £155 billion in just 1 year. The situation being so bad that, if you remember, Labour's finance spokesman actually left a note in the Treasury saying there was no money left. And here in North Tyneside, we all know about Labour's overspending. Indeed, I know from the latest financial reports, a multi-million-pound overspend is forecast for this year. So rather than making excuses for your own financial incompetence and asking the government for more money, put your own finances in order and balance this council's books. If you did, then you wouldn't need the government to bail you out.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Can I have Councillor Rankin, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll try and bring a bit of realism to the debate here. Spending in the North has fallen by £700 million in real terms since 2012. The South of England has had a £7 billion increase. When inflation is taken into account, every region in the North of England has seen a fall in spending on services since 2012, and that's services for schools, for police and for local government. The South East has seen an increase of 4.8%, the East has seen 4.1%, the North East has seen a reduction of 1% in spending. That is overall disproportionately greater to our region. I don't need to quote fake figures. This comes from the country and regional analysis provided by the government, which was printed on the 9th of November of this year. I suggest you read it.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, I missed Councillor Glindon there. Sorry.
Right, Chair, we're appealing this way, so what I've heard from across the chamber, I just expected to hear that when I seen the motion when it was first written out, to be quite honest. A councillor, or a couple of councillors went on a rant about things which have got nothing whatsoever to do with the motion. They're blaming the Councillor Newman for not knowing what's in the budget. I look after the grants, because I'm the Cabinet of Finance. I don't know from year to year what the savings are. I can find out. The way you asked the question, you tried to make him look a fool, like you made yourself look a fool. You were the Cabinet member for Finance once, and I bet you couldn't sit there now and tell me, unless you've researched it before you came out, how much the grants went down year by year. The growth in services is what's led to the drop in funding that we're getting. The government came up with this plan last year to give extra money by putting a precept on for adult social care, and that was great. But everybody blamed the council for putting it on, not the government giving them the money to do it. The council said, oh well, you're allowed to put a precept on, add that to the council tax. And that's, at the end of the day, the public didn't really understand that the government was failing in its duty to look after adult social care and making us charge the government, charge the public for doing it. They keep blaming Labour. You blame them for 7 years, right? If I was in a job and I couldn't do it for 7 years, I'd be sacked. I think that's what should happen with this government. They keep saying year on year, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it. But I see nothing fixed. It gets worse year by year by year. The budget yesterday was nothing. There was a giveaway budget, £28 billion, I'll give you that. But not 28, there was none of that money went to the councils, not a penny of it. He didn't even mention adult social care, which to me is a disgrace. When everybody's getting older and older, the service is going to be, the service is under massive pressure now, but year by year it's going to be under extra pressure. He did say that he may get some money next year, but I know he's going to do it. He's going to tell councils to put another precept on. There was no mention made for children. There's no, the whole thing, as I was a giveaway budget for those in need, for those not in need. The entire speech not surprised me. There's no help for the needy, but plenty of help for the greedy. And to be quite honest, straight, the speeches I've heard tonight from the opposition never surprised me one bit. And I just don't know who wrote them. If you wrote them yourself, if your son wrote them or your husband wrote them, but they're absolute disgrace.
Chairman, I think it's absolutely unnecessary to allege that other people are writing my speeches. It may well be that other people write Labour members' speeches, but it does not happen on this side.
Chair. Okay, thank you. Can we just move on?
I did not mention her
Can
name.
we just move on, please? Thank you.
There are only two of us who have spoken, so to allege a son or a brother can only refer to either Councillor McIntyre or myself.
Councillor Wallace, we just move on. It's Councillor Drummond. Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chair. I think we wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for the savage cuts this government's imposed on the people in North Tyneside and this council. And going about writing speeches, I think Lewis Carroll must write the speeches on the bench over there.
Thank you, Councillor Drummond. Councillor Spillard.
Thank you, Chair. I find it quite interesting that we're back when we're talking about cuts in grant, that we immediately go back to 2010 and the talk about debt, and yet the debt under the Conservative government is now standing at 1.8 trillion, a record figure ever. So I don't think people have anything to be proud about that. We also had questions regarding the reserves, and I found it in the papers for the auditors, and it mentions that the general fund balance remains at 6.6 million, and the strategic reserve totals 13.93 million. I wasn't quite sure why they were asking that question, other than to think, does that mean we should spend all of that reserve and not worry about a rainy day or unexpected expenses, rather than ask the government to give us a decent amount of money to provide services for our residents? I think there's also questions to ask about, we can be criticised for not achieving all the savings, but what would have been the cost of achieving those savings? Do we say it to people who have learning disabilities and are unable to live on their own, I'm sorry, we don't provide a service to you anymore because we've hit our expenses, the amount of money we have to spend? Do we leave those children who are taken into care because they're at risk in the homes that they've come from, where they may be abused and their lives destroyed? Where do we achieve savings when we have to respond to demand which we cannot predict accurately? The one thing we know is people are living longer, but the longer they live, they will become frail and they will require support. Ongoing cuts is not going to solve problems for any of those people. And therefore, if you care about the people in North Tyneside, whether it's in St Mary's, or in Riverside, or in Battle Hill, or in North Shields, you will understand that you should be speaking for the people of North Tyneside and not defending the government whose austerity programme has clearly failed.
Thank you, Councillor Spillard. Can I have Councillor Harrison?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to stick to the intention or the intent of what the motion is, and the intent of the motion is for us to, or the Mayor, certainly, to write to the Chancellor and asking them to cancel all planned cuts to this council, and not necessarily getting into a long debate of who's getting more money than the others. But the reality I see is this: since 2010, those days when we started the austerity, and we are still going on with the austerity, there's no cease to that. And we also talked then about getting rid of the debt, and yet we see it in the budget being pushed even further out. But the reality of what's happened in North Tyneside is this, and it's to put in some rather simplistic terms for ourselves to understand. Back in them days, we had probably about a £200 million budget. The government came along and said, well, you need to start cutting, and you need to cut over a period of time. So we took out over that period of time a region of around about 46 million. So in simplistic terms, we took a 200 million budget down to 150 million. And we also now facing further cuts, which will take us up to 2020 of around about a similar amount. So in simple terms, is we're taking a £200 million budget and reducing it to 100 million, because the government are reducing the finances, or they're coming towards us. The reality then is we're seeing a cut in those finances, but an increase in a demand of some of those service areas. And some of those service areas are certainly we see as in adult social care and children's services. And it's interesting to look at some of those statistics. So for every £1 we as a local authority spend, at the present moment, go back to 2010-11, 41p of that was actually spent on those services I've just said. And the rest was spent on, if you want, collecting our bins, keeping our streets clean and filling potholes. Then we see that rise to 46p, so there's more and more money being required for those adult services, and less money coming towards us. In 16-17, those figures actually equate to 50p, and every pound that we spend is going towards adult services. The projections for 1920 is seeing just under 60p of that pound, but this is council taxpayers' money being provided to provide those well-worthy services for our young people and certainly our adults or grown out older people within our area. very important services for us. But what we see is a reduce of the finances coming towards us. And I think if there's any way for us to actually write to the Chancellor or the government saying we need to address this balance or unbalance with us, because we're going to end up in a position where we have really difficult decisions to make. Do we fill the pothole? Do we look after our young people? Do we provide clean and safer streets? Or do we make sure we have the services for our older people? Those are the difficult decisions that we've had against an ever-decreasing income coming towards us. And there's only so much you can raise through council tax, and that doesn't equate to that 100 million that we've lost or will have lost since 2010, with no give-up from the government towards us. So what we do need is a proper financial and support to us in local government to provide those essential services. I'll wind up now, Chair. To provide those essential services that we see that we need for the people that we as a local authority represent. And I'll finish on this. If we don't do something about it, because it's not just North Tyneside, the recent statistics tell me local government in England faces a 5.8 billion funding gap by 2020. And that means the impact on our local authorities is back to, do we empty the bins or do we provide those services for people? Doesn't matter how much cuts we make in service or how much efficiency savings, that is a reality. Cuts, cuts, cuts.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Could I invite Councillor Pickard to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder why it is that every time we try to do something to get more resources and do something for the residents of North Tyneside, the Tories complain and oppose. And in doing so, they try trawling around the world, looking for somewhere that's worse than here. Mention things like Venezuela. You could reply by saying, what about General Pinochet and Chile with Margaret Thatcher? But it would be pointless. It does nothing for the people of North Tyneside there. Keep mentioning 2010 as if it was just a financial problem in England. It wasn't. It was a problem around the whole world. And what happened? Those responsible were jailed in America, fined in Europe and given tax cuts and bailed out in Britain. That was the end result of 2010. You've had 7 years and 2 prime ministers and can't do anything better than could massively increase the debt year on year on year. Okay, you now tell us you may be at the pinnacle. So that means you haven't been reducing at all. You've been climbing up year on year on year. But what's this about? It's about getting extra resources for this council. All the councils were asked to sign an agreement, not just this council, all councils around the country, for a 4-year settlement. That settlement showed rate support grant going over those 4 years down to 0. So, you know, there's the cut for you, from 30 million down to nothing. That's a big enough cut. But it said it would be replaced by maintaining the fact of councils being to retain the business rates. Since your disastrous general election, you haven't even put that back to Parliament. So we are left as councils in a total situation of not knowing long-term how we can fund some of the services we're doing. And to be fair, it's not just this council. The Local Government Association, which is run by the Conservatives, the chair is Lord Porter, who's a Conservative, have said time and time again to the government the massive problems of the increase in demand for adult social care, the massive problems of increasing costs looking after people with disabilities, looking after people with mental health problems, looking after people with learning difficulties, young children to stop them being vulnerable. Those costs are going up year on year on year by councils are being asked to make more and more cuts. It is only the proper and right thing to do to ask the government to take account of these. And let's not start talking about money for the trains. That doesn't help towards adult social care. Let's not just talk about money for devolution. That doesn't help about adult social care. But the £1 billion is a relevant issue to raise. Because a week before we were all being told there's no such thing as a magic money tree. When you didn't win the election, all of a sudden there was a magic money tree and £1 billion appeared. Well, if they can do that to help support services in there, they can do that to support health services around the rest of the country. So I hope we'll agree to the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Councillor Frank Plott.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Pickard, once again, when this council tries to do something to increase resources coming into it, we receive a litany of carefully contrived statistics from the opposition trying to convince us that we shouldn't. I think it's entirely reasonable for us to have some doubts about the accuracy or the honesty of some of those statements. However, I do remember 2 or 3 council meetings ago, the leader of the opposition advising us that if we're not open and transparent with the electorate, they will vote us out. As I look across from the massed ranks of the Labour councillors to a Conservative group of 5, I have to say she got it right.
Thank you, Councillor Lott. Can I ask Councillor Gary Bell?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair, there are only 5 Conservatives across there. There are 6 people sitting there, but it's 5 plus 1.
Maths has always been the problem over there, hasn't it?
Chair, can I speak?
Councillor Bell,
Yeah. I just want to support Andy's motion. I didn't like the way I was beaten up by the opposition, and better than stick together. So just to give the other side some facts, if they think this is a Tory economic revolution, the deficit was supposed to be ended by 2015. Is that correct, everybody?
Absolutely.
And then it was going to be 2020, I believe. And then now it's 2031. So that's 16 years out of date. But that would be us on this side, we'd be classed as incompetent. GDP is supposed to rise at a amazing 1.5%, I believe, and that's if Brexit goes well. If Brexit goes badly, we'll be in recession. But also, the right-wing Tory Brexiters, probably across most of them across there, who want a no deal, £3 billion being assigned to them to keep them happy, so he doesn't lose his job. We've got 1.7 trillion debt. Okay, the deficit's down now to 49 billion, but it should be 0, according to the Tories. We've had nothing on adult social care in the budget, apart from a review again. How many reviews do we have to need for this government to do something? So I wouldn't really be worried about the Tory economic, because it's not a revolution, it's a disaster. And unfortunately, the residents of this borough are paying for it. And I came a councillor to represent the residents of this borough, Tory, Conservative, non-voter, Green, Labour, whatever, and they're not getting a good deal. And if they can't side with us on that, it just shows you how bad they are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Nigel Huscroft?
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping I wasn't going to get involved in this tonight, but it's just it's same old, same old. Unfortunately, it's a motion that's brought forward to support the people of North Tyneside, and what happens is we have party political statements being lashed across the chamber. It's not surprising that the residents get frustrated and annoyed when they see that we can't even decide on what we should do to support them. This is certainly a motion where the political court should have been left hanging outside, and we should be back to what some of the councillors have already mentioned on the other side about the fact that it's about North Tyneside. I'm a North Tyneside councillor, therefore I'm not bothered about what you spend in London, to be perfectly honest, or anywhere else. I'm bothered about what happens in North Tyneside. This is to protect the people of North Tyneside. I accept that Councillor Newman didn't have his facts on some of the figures, but just to point out quickly, and I know before anybody says it, we will never have to make these decisions. We are not going to be in the power. It's been said before. It's easy for me to sit here and say it because I'll never have to do it. But what I will say is the pupil premium and the tax was not your policy. So therefore, you might know his figures, but you don't know what your policies are, because both those policies were brought in by us, or we actually give you those policies. So I think we should get back to looking after the people of North Tyneside and stop kicking us around the table. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Nigel Huscroft. Thank you. Can I have Councillor Early, please?
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I accept what Councillor Huscroft said, I think we do have to look at this in the wider national picture, and I think the opposition are right to draw on the wider economic picture, and I think it's the case that the rosy picture that's been pointed at negative economic growth is way off the mark. When you take money out of North Tyneside Council budget, That's money that isn't going into the local economy. It chokes off economic growth both at a local level, and that's because of a failed policy of austerity that's operated at a national level. I think today several economic foundations have come out and said that they're now predicting the longest period of stagnation of living standards since the 19th century. That's the 19th century, not the 20th century. The Resolution Foundation is saying that incomes will be £550 lower for the average family by 2023. This has already been said. The Office for Budget Responsibility is predicting that economic growth over the next 5 years will fall to an average rate of 1.5%. And that, at a national level, mirrors the problem at a local level. Either national level or local level, you can't cut your way to economic growth. You can't stifle off investment and hope to grow an economy. And if you don't grow the economy, either nationally or locally, then it affects the wealth of our local residents. And so this motion, although it speaks about the people of North Tyneside, is a microcosm of what's happening nationally, and therefore the response is quite rightly to approach this by writing to the Chancellor and trying to affect it at a national level.
Thank you, Councillor Early. Could I ask Councillor Grayson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, I don't think any of us have memorised the exact figures from the council budget meetings that we had in February, and certainly not for the last 7 years. But what we do know, and what we can say very confidently, is year on year there has been government reductions in funding to this council. And this motion is about this council calls upon the Mayor to stand up and write to the Conservative government for North Tyneside Council. And regardless of the political points and the political differences of opinion, every councillor in this chamber should vote for this motion. It's that simple. Year on year, we have experienced cuts since 2010, and we need to point that out to the Chancellor, and the Chancellor needs to do something about it. I'll not repeat comments, but I agreed with Councillor Bell's comments regarding the debt, and now it's not going to be paid off till 2031 instead of the 5 years. And that's as a consequence of that, the Chancellor yesterday even reduced the growth predictions, and he downgraded the ones that he had made. Commentators at the time he made them said that were ambitious. They've been proven to be right, and the Chancellor was wrong, and they have been downgraded. And the actual new growth predictions that he's made, commentators are saying are ambitious, so probably they'll be downgraded in the future as well, and they are nowhere near the levels of our European partners, although maybe not the word partners for very much longer, obviously if some people get their way, unfortunately. But we're not doing as well as Europe, and that's because of the way the economy has been run, and the Chancellor has failed and is even downgrading his own predictions. But coming on to a couple of specific points, the schools funding. I speak to a lot of people in education, head teachers, and one thing that they do all agree on, they all agree that education funding has been reduced. The direct schools grant, even the education support grant that comes to this council, these grants, these funding streams have been downgraded. I'd have to look the exact figures up for you, but I know year on year these have been reduced. And I also know that schools in Philip Hammond's constituency, some of the head teachers there have sent letters out to parents asking for parental donations. A group of head teachers in Hexham did exactly the same. This is the state of the school's finances, where head teachers are asking parents to make additional contributions to fund the schools, which is a disgrace. Absolutely right. It is a disgrace. Money going to other things, but actually our children not having the resources in the schools, and schools having to cut budgets. This council gets quarterly reports on school budgets presented by Councillor Glindon. Once again, I can't give you the exact figures off the top of my head, but I know every single time that Councillor Glindon presents the reports, balances in many schools are going down and the number of schools in deficit is going up. And unfortunately, that is repeated across the North East and across the country. So I'm not sure where other people are getting their figures from, that schools are not well funded, there has been reductions, and this is systematic of the other grants and things that we've got across North Tyneside. So I come back to my first point, Chair, and I'll finish on that. The council therefore calls upon the mayor to write to the chancellor asking him to cancel all planned cuts to this council. And if you support North Tyneside, you have to support this motion for the residents of North Tyneside.
Thank you, Councillor Grayson. Can I invite the elected mayor?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make one or two things clear. That the mind to deal devolution has not been agreed until tomorrow, and after that it has to go to consultation with businesses and everyone in the region. And one of the things that I would like to say to her, because I often agree with you, Councillor Huscroft, my role here is to do the best for the residents of North Tyneside, and you've heard me say that time and time again. I don't want to go back in history. I don't want to hear the pros and cons of who said what or why. I want the best for the residents here in North Tyneside. And if I had thought everything in the garden was rosy in North Tyneside, I wouldn't have been trailing to London back and forward for a year to get a deal which would enable us to give us the powers to make things better for the residents of North Tyneside. That's all our duties. And I can't see, once again, with the people who put the crosses in your boxes to make you here to represent them, you cannot agree to this motion because it's about the people you serve.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Newman if you'd like to exercise the right to reply?
I would, yes. Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say, look, I just want to bring this motion back to what it is intended for. We have had £109 million worth of savings to make. We are going to have to make £80 million of savings this year. The DUP will get £1 billion worth of funding. Those are the three facts that matter. Yet again, the people opposite have completely and utterly ignored the motion, gone on a load of random facts, yet not engaged with this core issue. You've not said nothing about whether or not it's fair. You've said nothing about the morality of these cuts. You've said nothing about any of it. I can only assume that you think more of Northern Ireland and the people of Northern Ireland than the very people who you're supposed to represent. You think they should get more money and we should get less because you haven't even engaged with this. Councillor Wallace has gone on a massive rant about how great the Conservative Party's budget is. Yeah, let's have a look at the budget. I wasn't going to go through the budget too much. I was going to try and ignore it because, after all, there were a few good policies announced in the budget, but the more observant among us might have recognised that most of those really good policies originate in the Labour Party manifesto. I can't help but think that Ed Miliband must have been sitting there with a smile on his face as he announced a policy about land banking, the very policy that the Tory Party ridiculed Ed Miliband on a few years ago. But as Jeremy Corbyn said yesterday, we're happy to share. So, our manifesto is ready to read if you need it. Again, I'm just going to go back through it, and some people have said this, but let's have a look through it. Your budget, right, your economic performance, the deficit was supposed to be removed by 2015, you failed. It was supposed to be removed by 2016, you failed. You were supposed to remove it by 2017, you failed. It's supposed to be 2020, you failed. It's now going to be in 2031. So that's your economic performance. Let's have a look at the rest of it. UK growth forecast is supposed to be 2% every year for the foreseeable future. Isn't that supposed to be a winning economic performance? 2% every year. Tax avoidance is at its worst ever. We've still got, the Duke of Westminster who hasn't paid £3.4 billion worth of inheritance tax. We've got the donor for the Tory Party, Lord Ashcroft, again, avoiding all these taxes. Our budget could be sorted out if your donor paid his taxes. I'm sick to death of this. I'm sick to death of every time trying to defend North Tyneside. You people there just ignoring North Tyneside and sticking up for your own party. You forget who you represent. You're supposed to represent the people of North Tyneside, not the people in Westminster. I really am starting to get annoyed with people ignoring local budget funding. You've really got the wrong end of the stick here. It saddens me because we could have sat together, all of us in this chamber could have said in one voice, we don't think these cuts are right. You could have defended the people of North Tyneside by saying these cuts are unfair. You could have. You could have backed us. You could have backed the residents. But again, you've ignored us and backed your own party. I think it's absolutely disgraceful, and I've got no more problem saying that.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Now we're going to go to the vote. Can I ask all those in favour of the motion? Those against? There's 43 for and 6 against, so the motion is carried. Thank you. To move on to motion 2, can I invite Councillor Hall to move the motion, please?
This motion to council is to ask North Tyneside Clinical Commissioning Group to go ahead with the planned opening of the 24/7 urgent care centre at Rake Lane Hospital, as agreed in June this year and promised to open on the 1st of October, just a month ago, 2017. In June 2017, not 6 months ago, following an in-depth review and detailed research about the need for an urgent care centre, together with public consultation, it showed very clearly that the best and most supported service would be a 24/7 urgent care provision at Rake Lane. And of course, any other changes must be fully consulted on. North Tyneside CCG has recently proposed an urgent care centre with shorter opening times of 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night, using GPs and a smoke and mirror solution of NHS 111 and GP backup. If this level of service is to be considered, it should be tested while we have a 24/7 urgent care service in place. Shortages of general practitioners will not help a service which depends on the availability of GPs. There is concern that the urgent care centre might not be provided at Rake Lane Hospital. Rake Lane was quite clearly the most supported place in the consultation meetings which were held at the beginning of this year. It is very important that the urgent care centre is in an accessible place with car parking and public transport services. Why have North Tyneside Clinical Commissioning Group changed the service, which we all agreed in July 2017 was the urgent care service that was wanted and needed? Urgent care services are a fundamental part of the system. What about the complaints that patients are filling up the accident emergency provision at Cramlington when they should be attending a local urgent care centre? If North Tyneside Urgent Care Centre is only open half the time, people will go to the place they know that is open 24 hours, 7 days a week. Hospitals in Northumberland have retained their status as urgent care centres. Indeed, one just along the road from the Cramlington Hospital, Wansbeck, has retained its 24/7 provision, as has the RVI in Newcastle. How are they able to have these services and North Tyneside not? Everyone agreed at the end of a long consultation last year that indeed a 24/7 service should be provided. Residents of North Tyneside were told they would get a single urgent care centre open at 24/7 at Rake Lane Hospital. And I agree with the recommendation here that the council request the Mayor to write to the CCG and the Minister of Health about this situation. I move that we should have this centre 24/7 now.
Formally second, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
Oh, thank you, Thank you, Councillor Green. Are there any questions to the motion? Councillor Wallace.
Chairman, we're happy to support this motion because we want the best services for our residents and we look to the CCG to deliver them. And I'm grateful for the courtesy of being allowed to speak.
Can we just have silence when Councillor Wallace does speak?
I suggest therefore that we go straight to the vote. We do look forward to a very full consultation between both medical and lay personnel.
Okay, thank you. We can, I can still invite members to motion, to speak the motion. Yes, the election mayor.
I just want to say that yesterday I had a meeting with Jim Mackey, the Chief Executive of Northumbria Trust, and I had to have a meeting with him because I'm very concerned that rumours were going around the borough that they're going to sell the hospital off to have a housing estate, right? And the first thing he said, there's no truth in that whatsoever. I then asked him about the urgent care project and what was happening there. And he actually said to me, he understood it was going to continue to be there, because the chief executive was there. And it would continue to be, well, hopefully, 24/7. And he said he would write me a letter to confirm that. So, those are his words. I'm waiting for the letter. Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
Can I invite anyone else who would like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spillard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really glad that all sides seem to agree on this, but I just wanted to mention that I think the problem we have is that it's not the decision of the trust whether it opens 24/7. The decision is the decision of the CCG and is driven by lack of funding. And I attended one of the consultation meetings that were held just a couple of weeks ago, where the CCG reiterated their intention for it to be closed overnight. And their justification was the number of people attending. And they then went on to say that they believed that when it went out to procurement again, the trust would then be prepared with the funding available to apply for the contract. So it's because there's not enough money available in the contract to provide that 24/7 funding. So I think we're in a bit of a catch-22 situation with the size of the deficit in the CCG's funding that is driving all of this change. And although I'm absolutely delighted for the people in Haltwhistle and in Wansbeck that they have 24/7 as they do in Cronlyton, that is absolutely no help whatsoever to the people in North Tyneside, particularly the elderly man I spoke to 3 weeks ago, who, having been discharged from Cronlyton at 1 o'clock in the morning, had to walk home to Percy Main and didn't get there till 6 a.m. because he didn't have the money for a taxi. Likewise, the grandfather who told me about his granddaughter, a young woman, whose parents were away on holiday, and she rang them in desperation to come and pick her up, but his car was in the garage, and she had to walk through the night to get home. So not only do we have people having to travel unreasonable distances, we also have people then in danger having to walk those sort of distances because they can't even afford taxi, nor are they offered transport. And as many of us know, a lot of our residents do not have the wherewithal to pay for taxis, even if they manage to get some money out of a cash point at the other end. That would probably be their food for the week. And when they have to make those sort of choices, then they make it that they will walk because they need to eat. So I think we need to, it is difficult for the CCG. This is all about underfunding of the NHS, which is why I think it's particularly important we write to the Minister, but I don't think there's any easy answers. And I must say, I do feel particularly for the parents of young children. When my son was 6 months old, he was diagnosed with asthma. So I frequently at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning had to head off in the car because he couldn't breathe. And he would be kept in maybe overnight or a couple of days. What happens to the parents with those children now if they don't have a car and they have to get to Cronlyton? How much does that child struggle to breathe overnight till they can get to a doctor. I just think that it's unacceptable that North Tyneside people should be in this situation, but I think it's also the government who are going to have to put it right, because without the funding for the CCG, they are going to have to cut this service and other services.
Can I have a response from the elected mayor?
Yes, the conversation I had with Jim Mackey yesterday was about he'd had a conversation with the CCG, right? And he was talking about an agreement with them that the 24/7 project there would continue. Now, I've been told that, and that's where we're at, and Patrick was there at the meeting as well, so we'll just have to wait. But I want to assure everybody, like everyone here, if that doesn't happen, we'll be campaigning very, very strongly to make that happen.
Thank you. Can I, Councillor Gary Bell? Sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't questioning that was what had been said. I was just trying to reflect what was actually said at the consultation to residents. So I do apologise if it came over across like that.
Right, Councillor Gary Bell.
Every time I want to speak, people try to interrupt. Well, I would have a word of caution there, because this gentleman's got previous in the past, so I wouldn't be too enamoured of what he tells us. So I would be a word of caution to the elected mayor and the chief executive. This hospital at the moment, Great Lane, I've got stories of people telling me to get blood pressure taken and they've been sent to Crampton because there's nobody there to do it. This is a diabolical service to the residents of North Tyneside. And Leslie's right. It's all about the CCG. I've got the money to fund the place. And if they had the money, they wouldn't even bother with closing the 24/7 urgent care. They would fund it. And they say, you know, it's just about money. It's simple as that. It goes back to the original motion we just discussed. And if you haven't got a car or public transport, you have to get taxis. And taxis are expensive. We're all here, we're pretty well off, most of us I presume, but we can afford a taxi, some people won't, and it would be a difference between maybe putting £5 on your meter or £5 on a taxi to take you to the hospital. So that is totally acceptable for the residents of North Tyneside. And this has to be sorted out, because why have the residents of Hexham and Wansbeck, which covers Ashton and all that, they've got the 24/7. It looks like we've been deliberately targeted because of CCG funding, that's all it is. And I know there's additional money given by the Chancellor yesterday, but I don't know how that's going to come back to the CCGs. But it's all about this the CCG funding, and Leslie is right. So basically, unless we get some really concrete guarantees from this gentleman that this is going to come back. Another thing we've got to be careful of as well about this is specialisms. Because if they start to pull specialisms out Great Lane, and I see Patrick's not there, we're in trouble. So we've got to keep our specialisms there. They can't be replicated anywhere else. We have to have specialisms in Great Lane Hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I've got two more speakers and we will go to vote. Did you?
Could I seek legal advice, please? I'm interested to hear what the elected mayors had to say, and I welcome the comments that from the chief executive of the trust. But what is the legal position with regard to procurement? If this is going out to procurement, how can the chairman make the chief executive make those assurances to the elected mayor? What is the legal position with regard to procurement exercise?
I don't think I'm going to comment on that. I'm not privy to any of the conversations or any of the arrangements that are likely to be coming forward. Clearly it's a matter for the CCG to be considering and Associated Trust.
I'm concerned that perhaps the comments that have been made place the trust or the CCG in a difficult position.
I think it'll be interesting to see what letter comes forward at the fullness of time.
Chair, I'm sorry, but many of us at the back here can't hear this conversation that's going on.
Can we just... We, at the beginning of this debate, you said everyone said they were going to vote in favour of it. Okay, we've had some speakers. We've got two more speakers. Then we will go to the vote. Okay, thank you. So the next speaker is Councillor Marion Huscroft. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just basically want to set out the fact that we'll be supporting this motion as well. Like many members here, we've got concerns. That if this 24/7 provision is reduced, that in fact it will be a false economy anyway. As more people are going to ring 999 and call out paramedics and ambulances, and that in turn will cost the NHS more. Each of us will have been urgent care or know someone who has. People don't decide when they're going to take ill or have an accident. It would be convenient if it was before 10 o'clock at night, but it very often isn't. I think if we don't have 24/7 care in North Tyneside, then our area will be receiving less care, and we should do what we can to try to ensure that this continues. With regard to the comments made by the Mayor, then I'm sure she was speaking very sincerely, and I hope that the gentleman who spoke to her is also speaking very sincerely, because I think it would be what we'd want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, can I have Councillor Wendy Lott?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we need to have Cromlin and NSEC have the classification of the hospital clarified, because when it first opened it was going to be a trauma hospital, not an accident and emergency hospital, and that anybody attending the hospital would only arrive there via an event. It wasn't a walk-in centre where anybody that a finger would go. There was no patient supposed to stay there more than 72 hours. They would go there for their initial treatment and then go back to the base sites for their recuperation. Now, the ordinary hospitals like Rake Lane is becoming a white elephant because it's no longer needed for recuperation, because patients are staying in Cramlington for several weeks and people are turning up there for accidents and not trauma, and that's where it was supposed to be, a trauma hospital. And I think we were sold down the river when we were told that's where it was going to be, because it's changed from a trauma hospital into an accident and emergency hospital, and that wasn't the purpose of it when it was built.
Thank you, Councillor Lott. Sorry, I wasn't going to take any more speakers. Councillor Green.
Just reserve the right to speak.
Sorry, for your did you reserve, because you seconded the motion, yes? Yes.
Can I just confirm that the comment that the Mayor made in the discussion with Jim Mackey was actually the same comment made at the Governor's meeting last night of the Northumbria Healthcare Trust. So it's not private information. But just to add to that also, that there is a proposal to have a strategic review. It's 2 or 3 years since the hospital at Cramlington opened, and like everything new, and I have to say, because of the way it is actually staffed with consultants from every problem that there could be, it is actually saving lives. It's actually working, it's saving lives. But there is going to be a strategic review of the hospitals that there are in Northumbria Healthcare Trust, really to have a look at the very points that Councillor Lott was making about people going to the wrong place and the promises were made about accident and emergency at Rake Lane. The reason why the Wansbeck and Hexham are actually remaining open 24 hours is because they're actually paid for by Northumbria CCG and not North Tyneside CCG. So I think a lot of very good points. We have to work with Northumbria Healthcare Trust and the CCG. They are our partners in giving health and social care and support to the residents of North Tyneside. And whilst we can be cautious and we need to be, looking carefully at what is actually done, I think with Jim Mackey coming back now, we talk about personalities, but I think we perhaps are coming into a different era, it remains to be seen what happens out of this strategic review. But I just wanted to make one comment about the actual resolution that we've got. I ask ourselves, why are we in this particular mess where there is one body who has control of the money, it has to put out everything to tender, and it's asked people for a consultation, what do you want and where's the best place to be, and people tell them we want 24 hours at Rake Lane Hospital. And the reason is very simple, because we have not only in local government but in the health service this purchase a provider, this tendering for every service that we've got. It started in the 80s with Thatcher when we had compulsory competitive tendering, purchase a provider in the health service, and you can't, the money just doesn't come down to the hospital and the hospital decides what services it has. It actually has to tender with its private operators that could actually come in and take over running the urgent care, or any part of it that was out for tender. So we've got a mess because we don't fund the health service directly, and you know, this idea of having to tender for everything really makes things very, very difficult for everybody. So I fully support this, and I hope that what Jim Mackey has said publicly actually happens. And at the meantime, we will continue, as the motion says, to campaign to get 24/7 urgent care back at Rake Lane. That's what the people wanted. So, you know, that's what we need to be giving them.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Hall, do you want the right to reply?
Yes. Can I first of all say how pleased I am that the opposition have actually supported this motion. And I just want to remind people what a magnificent health service we do have in this area. We've got 3 major hospitals, all outstanding. I don't think there's any other part of the country which is so well served by a health service. And I think that's why people, that's why residents and people got so irate at what they felt was a fundamental cut in what is otherwise an excellent service. And I think we should really just keep reminding ourselves how lucky we are living here with these hospitals. I do hope everything works out, and I do think I feel confident enough to predict that there will be a 24/7 service at Rake Lane in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Now we'll go to the vote, and hopefully this is going to be unanimous. Okay. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you all. Thank you. We'll move on now to item 6, the annual audit letter. Can I ask Councillor Gaynor?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to present the Council the annual audit letter for 2016-17, which is a conclusion of the work completed by Ms. Oz in respect to the 16-17 accounts. The update is largely a duplication of what the audit completion report was presented to full Council's meeting in September, and Diane Harold is here to present the report from Ms. Oz.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon. This is our annual audit letter for 16-17, which in effect summarises the report that was brought to you in September. It's designed to be a slightly more user-friendly, summarised version of that report, and it's published on the external website for other stakeholders to read, so it removes a lot of the detail of the accounts that you saw in September. If I can briefly take you through it, the annual audit letter summarises the 2 key areas of our work. Firstly, the financial statements opinion, where an unqualified opinion was given on the accounts in late September before the deadline. Also, the value for money conclusion. An unqualified value for money conclusion was also given that the Council had proper arrangements in place to secure economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And we did have one significant risk, again, in respect of the value for money conclusion, common to many local government bodies, which was in respect of the level of savings required, and we detail in the report what work we did to test the assumptions around the savings plans, and we were able to gain sufficient assurance. We also have to report on certain matters, whether we have to exercise any of the formal auditor powers or any reports in the public interest, and there were no such issues there to report. There is one section in this report which I would like to just draw your attention to, which is slightly different to the September report, and that's the final page which sets out the future challenges. So that's slightly different wording, but nothing really in new effect. What it highlights is the key challenge facing the Council, the level of savings. It also summarises what the Council itself has pointed out are the significant governance issue in its own annual governance statement. And finally, it highlights the one challenge which is a seemingly small and dry area, which is the earlier deadline for the statutory accounts next summer, very relevant to the Head of Finance and ourselves as external auditors. Last night at the Audit Committee, the Head of Finance quite rightly pointed out that we're working closely together, which we are, and confident in delivering against the earlier deadline, but that it will require the support of the entire organisation to make sure that that is achieved. And if I can just finally, again, thank the Head of Finance, officers and members for the support. The continued patience and cooperation is very much appreciated when we continue to challenge in carrying out our auditor duties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Howell. Thank you. Can I ask Councillor McMullen to second the report?
Yes, I reserve the right to speak in second this motion.
Thank you. Are there any questions? And I invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Glendon.
Chair, can I just say that we'll note the report? Yeah.
That's fine. We'll go to vote then. Can I ask all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to item 7, the report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Can I ask Councillor Bruce Pickard to introduce the Chair of the Independent Remuneration Panel, Mr John Anderson?
Thank you, Chair. Every year we have to review the remuneration of the members of the Council, and each year it's undertaken by the Tyneside Independent Remuneration Panel, and the Chair is John Anderson, and he's here tonight to present his report.
Thank you. Mr Anderson, thank you.
Good evening, I'm John Anderson, Chair of the North Tyneside Independent Remuneration Panel, and I'm here to...
Excuse me.
Do you know, I asked which button I had to press and was told quite clearly, thank you very much indeed. Not only did I ask, but I got a public demonstration, thank you. I'm still John Anderson, and I'm here to present the panel's report on Members' Allowances Scheme for 2018-19. As you will be aware, the authority is required to approve a Members' Allowance Scheme prior to the commencement of each financial year, and the Council is required to have regard to the views of the Independent Remuneration Panel before agreeing the scheme. The panel continues to recognise that there is an ongoing need to reflect the level of responsibility and accountability and time in the allowances. The panel has considered the level of allowances currently paid to members and recommends no change to the current members' allowance scheme in this regard for 2018-19. And in summary, therefore, the panel recommend that there be no change to the members' allowance scheme for 2018-19. Could I just thank the officers for the reams of paperwork that they've produced for the panel regularly at our many meetings, and thank the councillors who attended the panel and gave their opinions. Thank you very much indeed. I'm now prepared to take any reasonable questions.
It doesn't look like you're going to get any questions, Mr Anderson. Thank you for that. You can switch off your speaker now. You know which buzzer to press.
Just take guidance here.
Thank you, thank you. Can I ask Councillor Pickard to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I start off by thanking John and the panel for the detailed work they do every year on this, and they always carry it out in an unbiased and a diligent way and go through formal consultation with all parties, and their recommendations are always most welcome by the Council. So I would formally ask that we agree those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Councillor Glendon, do you want to second the report?
I'll second the report and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Can I ask, is there going to be any questions or statements, or do we move straight to the vote?
Simply, I'd like to add my thanks on behalf of the Conservative Group Chairman to the panel.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. Can I now invite members to vote on the motion, please? Those in favour? That's another unanimous vote. Thank you. Move that. Right, item 8. Can I ask the elected mayor to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have previously informed members that with the effect from the 1st of October 2017, I appointed Councillor Gary Bell as Cabinet Member with responsibility for adult social care. This leaves a vacant position on the Adult Social Care, Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee. As councillors appointed to the Cabinet are unable to be a member of any authority scrutiny committees, the vacancy has now been filled by Councillor Tommy Mulvena. Also, as Councillor Bell was chair of the subcommittee, the appointment of the new chair is required. I therefore wish to move that Councillor Karen Clark is appointed as the chair of the subcommittee for the remainder of 2017-18, and as Councillor Clark is currently the deputy chair of the subcommittee, I would also like to move that Councillor Leslie Spillard is appointed as deputy chair of the subcommittee for the remainder of 2017 municipal year.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Carol Birders to second the report?
I'll second that report.
Are there any questions, statements? Can we just go straight to the vote, please? All those in favour? All those against? Well, we've got 43 in favour and none against. Thank you. Item 9, common seal. Thank you. Item 10 is my announcements. Just to say, we had the Chairman's Walk, which went very well for the first event, and it was a great day out, enjoyed by everyone who attended. A nice walk round North Shields and the Fiddler's Green and things. That was really nice. And it was a pleasant day, and we ended up in Northumberland Park, and everyone thought it was a good success. Also, I was involved in the local Democracy Week, and I was really inspired by the young people who took part in that. They were fantastic, and I enjoyed chairing their meeting, the Youth Council, and it was a really enjoyable event. I think everybody was really impressed with all the young people who took part in that week all together. I was also involved in the VODA, their volunteer presentations, and the Britain in Bloom, both which were really good, well-attended events and really sort of make you feel proud to be a part of North Tyneside. And also I represented the council at the remembrance events, and particularly the World War I commemoration project, which saw for the Battle of Arras, where the French consul Eric Dijon for the northeast of England presented the ceremony. Have I got it right there, Gary? Was it the poppy, isn't it, in the Linskill Centre? You probably put me right on all my.
Yeah, you're doing very well.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, it was a good event, even if it was really, really cold. Right? Thanks very much. I'll move on. Elected Mayor, would like to make your announcements?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you will have seen yesterday, I'm very pleased that the Government has agreed our proposals for a North of Tyne devolution deal. This, of course, is a landmark deal that will devolve powers and very substantial funding down from Government to us, working together with Newcastle and Northumberland. These proposals to provide a great opportunity for area and our residents. What it does is gives us more power and control of our funding and takes it away from the government. It brings it down to our level. Powers and funding to support and nurture world-class businesses, drive economic growth, create more and better jobs, help our residents to get into jobs with the skills they need, enable people to have a decent, affordable home, and create an area that is well connected, vibrant and thriving. Having a new directly elected mayor for the area will give us a strong voice at the national and international table. I think without this, we will fall further behind other regions who've already had devolution deals, and then we will not be able to compete. And this is important. The Minded to deal will be formally launched tomorrow, but I want to be really clear about the next steps. This deal is a Minded to deal at this stage. That is because, as with all devolution deals, the changes to governance arrangements that will be required to actually implement the deal are subject to consultation. The Cabinet will agree the start of the consultation process next month. The consultation process will run until the end of January and will involve all local authorities in the North East region, the public and all the key stakeholders. We will be consulting on 3 areas of proposed governance with changes. First, for the 3 North of Tyne authorities to lead the existing North East Combined Authority. Second, for the 3 North Tyne authorities to establish a new combined authority with a newly directly elected mayor. And third, the proposed arrangements for how the new combined authority will operate. At the end of the consultation process, each of the North of Tyne authorities will be asked to approve the consultation outcome to be submitted to government. Government will then seek final approvals to the new arrangements, and the North East Combined Authority will be asked to consent to the new arrangements. I am very clear that the proposal in this deal provides us with the powers and the funding we need to make a real and lasting difference to the people and the businesses on the side. It will change lives, and it will improve things, and that we'll be able to do the things that we here in the North East are important to our residents. And I don't think we can let them down. The consultation process will ensure that everyone can have their say, and I mean everyone, but I'm also very clear that we also need to make sure that the arrangements are the right ones for North Tyneside residents and businesses before we finally agree. And I would just like a further point. The Chief Executive and the leaders have been back and forward to London for over a year. It hasn't been easy, it's been difficult. We have fought very, very hard for powers to come to the north of the Tyne that we know will be able to make a big difference to our residents. And I would just like to say, our councils will just continue exactly the same. Nothing will change within the council at all, but exactly what it will enable us is 3 together to address certain needs that are common to us all. And there's something else I would like to add. I have to be fair. I have to be honest. And the ministers I met down in London, regardless of colour, were extremely polite to me, listened to us, and I'm sure they must have got sick of us knocking at the door and saying, that's not acceptable, that's not, we want this, we want this, we want this. But they listened, and I think they heard our cry. So I have to be fair, that I think we have got a deal that will benefit the North East, but we still have to consult on certain things. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Item 12, questions by members of the council, and we have 3 questions. First question is from Councillor Wallace. Do you want to ask the question or take it as read?
I'll ask the question, please, Chairman. Can the elected mayor tell me if any transactions between the council and the North Tyneside Trading Company or its subsidiaries have been so arranged or will be so arranged as to reduce or minimise the payments of taxes and duties? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. I can assure you that no such arrangements have been made. I've made sure we have taken appropriate external professional advice on various matters, including tax, VAT, corporation tax and stamp duty land tax, and made sure that all of the transactions are in line with the tax legislation.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Wallace?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Question 2, Councillor Barry, do you want to ask the question or take it as read?
Ask it. Can the Mayor confirm she's putting further £2 million into this year's budget to improve the roads and pavements, and due to the current financial position of the budget, can the Mayor tell us if she will be borrowing or using the airport dividend to pay for the works?
Can I ask Councillor Harrison to respond, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we have included 2 million into our budget for the investment in our roads and pavements during 2017-18. This is in line with all other funding from the capital plan and will be funded through borrowing of 1.727 million and external funding secured of 0.273 million. I have been advised by the Cabinet Member for Finance that this does not affect the airport dividend which we currently hold in the strategic reserve. The appropriate use of this reserve will be considered as part of the budget and financial planning process.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Barry?
I have. I welcome the Mayor's recent acknowledgement of the dire state of the footpaths, which the Conservatives highlighted during the budget debates. But since the officers have confirmed that some money originally designated to the road repairs has now been diverted to pavement, can the elected Mayor tell us which roads will not now be repaired and what steps she'll be taking to remedy that? Would it have been better to have repaired both, as the Conservatives wanted to do?
I think since the Mayor was elected, she's been very clear on the needs for not only repairing our roads, but certainly repairing or helping to repair our pavements. And during that period of time, we've been working up to this. The intention, yes, is to ensure, and we do this through our HAMP, your Highways Asset Management Plan. We have identified within there the needs for our roads, and we've certainly added within there the specific needs for some of our pavements. And with the guidance of the Mayor, we're looking at, if you want, areas where we would, around our schools, where we think it's important that we try and get our pavements correct there, and certainly where we see some of our older people's accommodation or other areas which may be busy. And that monies would be included within those budgets. It will not affect the HAMP itself. We will still see the maintenance, and you'll be receiving soon the programme of works to be carried out within your own ward, which I think is colour codes, and other councillors will be receiving that as we roll out the HAMP itself over the coming weeks. Certainly months, sorry.
Thank you. Question 3, Councillor Barry, would you like to ask the question or take it as read?
I'd like to ask it. Can the Mayor tell me who changed the North Tyneside Council logo and what consultation took place and when?
Thank you, Councillor Barry, but we really could have asked officers about this question outside of a council meeting. And I think you would have been reassured that the council logo has not changed. The council crest remains our corporate logo. Possibly, perhaps you don't understand that was the logo, I don't know, but it hasn't changed, the logo has not changed.
I've got mine on there. Yes. Is it a specific question? Is it a supplementary question?
It's the same logo, it's the same crest, Councillor Barry.
Okay, I think
crest.
Sorry, I've forgotten to put my speaker on as well. That's the end of the business for tonight, and I'd just like to invite anybody to the chairman's room for drinks after this meeting, the last meeting this municipal year, this year, sorry, not that year. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Chair, I'm sorry because of the last meeting. I would like to wish everybody a very, very pleasant Christmas and a happy, perhaps a prosperous New Year for us all. Thank you very much.
And same here as well. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you.